Good evening, ladies and germs. We are in the midst of the Halloween season, but I decided to take a completely different page here and start talking about the top 10 war movies of all time. So let's start with a little, what should we call it? Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the term that they use to describe teaching. Pedagogy on what a war movie means. What does a war movie mean? This is the definition I will be using. So if there's something that falls outside of that definition, that would be maybe why it's not in the top 10. And also, when I speak of the top 10 war movies of all time, I don't mean that they're in the top 10 films of all time either. I'm talking about the top 10 war movies of all time. For instance, the one that I'm talking about today is Tropic Thunder. I would put that at a 600 to 625 number range in the top movies of all time. I mean, that's still very high considering there's over probably 1 million movies that are made that we know of. But you have to understand that that's not even in the top 500. There, kick on Betty, the notorious Betty. She wants to say hi. She always comes over here and bothers me when I'm this. I don't know why, but she does. All right. But anyway, so we're going to start off here by me defining what it is, what it means to be a war movie. Okay? It's a movie in which combat has to take place. It doesn't have to be any particular style, year, war, anything like that. As we all know, Tropic Thunder, there is combat that takes place, but it is considered to be false, just like the idea of Hollywood's war movies being false, which is why it's number 10, because it is a lampoon of both war movies and Hollywood. It is a very underrated movie as far as people understanding how good it is. This is the type of film that people see and they laugh and they go, hey, that was a really good movie, but they don't understand that it's actually a very, very good movie. And this happens a lot, but that's okay, because I'll talk about it. I'll bring it up if no one else will. All right, so combat has to take place. That's number 1. 2, the center of the film has to be about the combat. Okay, and that's what's going to differentiate a lot of different movies. Because there are movies where definitely war takes place. Like, for instance, Ulysses. I'm talking about like the ancient story and things like that. But it's not the center of the movie. Okay? Even in Paths of Glory, which is not in the top 10, but is a very, very good movie, there's not much battling that takes place, but the conflict is or the battle is the center of the conflict. Okay, it's similar to what people debate on with Die Hard being a Christmas movie or not. The reason I don't consider it a Christmas movie is that the season is not the season of Christmas, whatever you call that. The shopping, whatever, the metaphysical realities that are associated with that, has to be the centerpiece of the movie. Okay? Just because something takes place in Christmas time does not make it a Christmas film, if that makes sense. But that's the definition that I choose to use. My sister, on the other hand, chooses to think that anything that happens during Christmas is considered a Christmas film. And that's fine. I'm not here to debate her, even though she's extremely wrong. All right, so anyway, let's move on to Tropic Thunder. Number 10. This is Tropic Thunder. I am sure most of you have seen it. But why is it so good? Well, first of all, this is one of the funniest movies I've seen in a long time. I can't even imagine a movie this truly funny being able to be made by Hollywood. I think it's because so many people got behind this project. I mean, from anyone from Ben Stiller to Jack Black to Robert Downey Jr. to Matthew McConaughey to even Tom Cruise, who really did steal the show in this movie. Okay? It is an entirely good film on 2 bases. One is it is a complete, almost lampoon of Hollywood, and lampooning is basically the funniest that you can be, because it's saying, in essence, that this is not a joke, but it is a joke, but it's not a joke, but it is a joke. This is kind of an infinity statement. Okay, it's very, very hard to sell a lampoon, because people just don't get the joke. They want it to either be a joke or not a joke that is kind of like black humor. You know, like Dr. Strangelove or something like that. Where, I mean, it's just black humor. The world is ending, but nobody seems to give a rat's butt. Okay? But this one is a very, very good movie. For innumerable reasons. The casting was excellent. The dialogue is excellent. The jokes are most assuredly excellent. And it also is really the antithesis of the Hollywood system making films, which is why it is so important to be in the top 10. Because it talks about the fact that War is not the same as what Hollywood makes it. Okay, that's kind of the start of it anyway. Is that we have an idea of what we think war is. We tend to think of it a bit like Platoon in a way, which is that, yeah, you're going to lose your innocence in it, but overall, it is not the world's most horrible thing because there's some glory. You can really understand the metaphysical nature of humans and blah, blah, blah. And yes, to some people that go into war, that is what happens. But there are a lot of people that go into war that it destroys mentally. Okay, and these are the people that we don't talk about. I'm sorry, it's just going to get very serious here for a moment. We don't talk about people that are shattered by their war experiences, and there are far too many to even mention. Okay, I've met many guys that have been, or ladies. I haven't met any ladies, but it's just because combat for women just started. Okay, but it can destroy people's lives just as easily as it can make them better. And war is the worst thing in the world that the world has to offer. Okay, so when you make fun of it, it's a little bit interesting to me, but it's also very, very true from their point of view. Like, for instance, in the opening sequence when Ben Stiller's arms have been blown off, and Robert Downey Jr. is trying to hold on to his flayed arms, and you know, I mean, it's very, very true. Because in that contextual information, do you think that would have really happened? No, of course not. But that's Hollywood, right? They have to have these big lines and all that stuff, and they knew that going in. It was a very, very smart film, and it was genuinely missed by most people as to why it was that way. Let's see. Ben Stiller helped write it. Ethan Coen helped write it, and Justin Theroux helped write it. And actually, Ben Stiller directed this, which is very, very good. I'm very, very happy with Ben Stiller's output on this film. I think he knew what he had, and that's why he was able to get so many people into it. Now, obviously, there's some stuff that's a little not so funny, but you have to understand that comedy is always overlooked by top 10 lists, top 100 lists, whatever. It's always overlooked. Like in AFI's top 100, excuse me, they maybe have 3 or 4 comedies in it. And that is absolutely 100% unacceptable. I'm not saying it should be 50 or 70. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that there should be more. There should be about 20 to 30 comedies that are in that. Okay, it's just the way it is. It's a little bit probably less than that, more like 15. If I really got into it, the numbers, I don't know. I would have to think about it because I have to think about where comedy stacks up to everything and if it's an actual comedy and blah blah blah. But Tropic Thunder is a great movie, and you should not think of this movie as just a laugh movie. There's a lot of information that goes under the surface that they're talking about that goes into this. Now, of course, that wasn't their intention to go that deep, probably, because they didn't want to turn off the audience. But at the same time, it really is true. I mean, you have like all these dramatic statements being made by this veteran that supposedly wrote this book. Then you find out he really wasn't in war and all this different kind of stuff. Right? And again, there's a lot of comedic elements in this that are overlooked. Obviously, the most famous in this is the blackface done by Robert Downey Jr., which is almost impossible to do. I don't know how he pulled that off, but it was done, and nobody seems to care. Blackface is traditionally viewed very negatively. But in this case, because it was for art, and Downey just was, he was just, his character, Lazarus, was so absorbed with his roles that we just tended to overlook it and just looked at it as a comedic element. All right. And again, like I said, when you're looking at this film, try to take 2 things in mind when you look at this film. One is that what is this actually saying about the nature of Hollywood and film? I want you to think about that. And number 2, I want you to think about what is it saying about the nature of Hollywood in general, okay, and the way that it approaches filmmaking and things like that. Those are 2 huge issues that were on the table for this film. And as I said before, it was just overlooked for any type of, well, it wasn't going to make the Oscars anyway because they never give comedies their due in the Oscars. And I don't know why. I don't know why you can't look at something and be like, yeah, that's a really good film. It's maybe, and I think this is probably it, is that when it is made completely in its time. There are all types of filmmaking, anywhere from classic to literally like making film about what's a very popular thing right now? I'm trying to think, like a cartoon or something. Oh, Dora the Explorer. That just, you go from the classic statements about life to really like this second's pop culture, and all of that's in between. For some reason, comedies are always lumped into it's what's going on now. Okay, but it's more than that with this film, and I do hope that you guys actually get out and rewatch this with those two things that I just said in mind. Okay, and until then, Alvida's in.